Most of us are familiar with the idea of urban legends, scary stories that are passed around from person to person, always changing a little bit. Some people might scoff at these kinds of tales, thinking they're just silly stories meant to scare young children. But for a group of friends from Utah, their disbelief would turn out to be a deadly mistake. It was a crisp autumn night in Provo, Utah. 4 friends were driving back from a camping trip. They had spent the weekend deep in the woods, far from the prying eyes of the outside world. It had been a fun trip, filled with hiking, fishing, and lots of ghost stories around the campfire. But now they were heading home, or so they thought. As they drove along the deserted highway, the conversation in the car turned to the subject of urban legends, those spooky stories that supposedly happened in their hometown. One such tale was the story of a hitchhiker who would appear out of nowhere, seemingly out to murder anyone who picked her up. The friends all knew the story well. In fact, they used to tell it to each other while they were in high school. According to the legend, the hitchhiker was the ghost of a woman who had been murdered by her boyfriend many years ago. Her spirit was said to haunt the roads near Provo, searching for a way to escape her earthly prison. The story went that if you saw this hitchhiker at night, you should never pick her up. Instead, you should keep driving. But if you did pick her up, she would silently climb into the back seat, wrap her icy cold fingers around your neck, and slowly drain the life out of you until you died. Then she would step out of the car, take your face in her hands, and scream at the top of her lungs, releasing your soul from its mortal coil. Needless to say, the friends had always thought the story was ridiculous, just another tall tale designed to scare teenagers. But now, as they drove down the empty road, the laughter died down and a sense of foreboding settled over them. Suddenly, a figure appeared on the side of the road, a young woman with long flowing hair, a tattered dress, and bare feet. She looked like she was in her early 20s, but her skin was pale and her eyes were vacant, like she wasn't really there. Startled, the driver slammed on the brakes, and the friends stared at the woman in disbelief. For a moment, no one said a word. Then one of the friends broke the silence with a nervous laugh and said, "Well, here's our hitchhiker." Another friend chimed in, "Let's not pick her up. Who knows what kind of crazy person this is?" But the first boy, being the stereotypical nice guy that he was, couldn't bring himself to leave her stranded on the side of the road. He figured if anyone could help her, it was him. So against his friend's wishes, he got out of the car and walked over to the hitchhiker. As he approached her, the girl didn't move or speak. It was as if she were a statue frozen in time. When he was close enough, he could see that her skin was an unnatural white, like marble, and her eyes were dark and soulless, like pools of ink. Fear shot through him like an electric shock, and he wanted to run back to the car and drive away as fast as possible. But something kept him rooted to the spot. Maybe it was the girl's eerie stillness or the unsettling feeling that came over him. He managed to stammer out, "Hey, do you want to ride?" The girl didn't respond. She just stared at him with her blank eyes. After a moment, he turned and ran back to the car, slamming the door shut behind him. His friends were staring at him anxiously, their faces pale in the dim light. He could see the fear in their eyes and hear the pounding of their hearts. He could also see the hitchhiker standing by the side of the road, still watching them with her unblinking eyes. With trembling hands, he started the engine, and the car lurched forward. As they drove away, he could feel the girl's gaze boring into their backs like a physical force. The friends didn't speak. They were too afraid to break the silence, too afraid of what might happen if they did. Suddenly, the girl was beside them. Her face pressed against the window, her eyes wide and staring. The friends screamed and swerved to avoid hitting her, but she was gone in a flash, vanishing from sight. They pulled over and sat there for a moment, too terrified to move. When they finally dared to look out the window, they saw that the hitchhiker was nowhere to be seen. They checked the back seat, but it was empty. Relieved, they decided to go home. But as they drove, the atmosphere in the car grew heavy with tension. The friends couldn't shake off the feeling that they were being watched. Every time they looked out the window, they half expected to see the hitchhiker standing there, her eyes boring into them. They tried to distract themselves by talking, but even that seemed to make the unease worse. Finally, they arrived home and stumbled out of the car, their legs shaking. As they went their separate ways, they promised to call each other in the morning to compare notes. But when the phone rang, none of them wanted to answer. What if it was the hitchhiker calling to tell them how she died, or perhaps to invite them to join her in death? Too afraid to listen, they let the phone ring unanswered. Days turned into weeks, but the friends couldn't escape the feeling that something was wrong. They had shaken off the legend of the hitchhiker, but now the legend seemed to have taken root in their lives. They started seeing the hitchhiker everywhere. Sometimes they would catch a glimpse of her out of the corner of their eye, or they would find flowers left on their doorstep, flowers that looked exactly like the ones in the girl's hair. And then there were the nightmares. Every night they dreamt of the same thing, a dark road, a lonely car, and the haunting laughter of a hitchhiker. Afraid, the friends turned to the police for help. Maybe someone else had seen the girl. Maybe someone else had heard her story. But the police were skeptical. They thought the friends were just making it up, trying to scare each other for fun. Left with no answers, the friends tried to move on, but it was impossible. The hitchhiker had become a part of their lives, a dark shadow that followed them wherever they went. And then one day, the nightmares became real. The four friends were driving home from a night out when suddenly they saw her, the hitchhiker, standing on the side of the road. They stopped, paralyzed with fear, as she approached their car. In a panic, they sped away, but she was quick and graceful, leaping onto the hood of their car and hanging on for dear life. They raced through the streets, but she stayed on the car, her face contorted in a silent scream. Finally, she jumped off the car and disappeared into the crowd. Shaken but relieved, they went home, or so they thought. When they arrived, they found their houses ransacked. Their belongings were strewn across the floor, their walls covered with strange symbols. And then they saw the hitchhiker, standing in the middle of one of their rooms, her eyes blazing with fury. The friends were trapped. There was nowhere to hide, nowhere to escape. And then the hitchhiker struck. Moving with inhuman speed, she attacked the friends, her touch draining the life out of them. They struggled, but it was no use. She was too strong, too relentless. One by one, they fell victim to her attack, their souls ripped from their bodies and dragged into the darkness. When the sun rose, the town was awoken to a terrible sight. The houses of the four friends were burned to the ground, their charred remains a grim reminder of the evil that had touched their town. And as for the hitchhiker, she was never seen again. Or was she? Some say that if you drive down that old highway at night, you can still see her standing there, waiting for a ride, waiting to drag another soul into her eternal darkness.